The forgotten Heiress. The night was unusually quiet, with the kind of silence that made the air feel heavier. Deep in the countryside, where the stars stretched endlessly over open fields, a loud explosion ripped through the sky. A streak of fire tore across the darkness, its blazing path leaving a trail of sparks. Farmers in their fields looked up in awe and terror. The object crashed into the woods with a deafening thud, shaking the ground like a small earthquake. Trees fell, and animals scattered, their cries fading into the distance. For a moment, there was silence again, except for the faint hiss of cooling metal. From the wreckage of what looked like a strange, sleek metallic pod, a figure emerged. She stumbled forward, her silver jumpsuit torn and stained with ash. Her skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, her pale, almost translucent complexion seeming unearthly. Her hair, long and silver like liquid light, clung to her face. Her violet eyes darted around, filled with confusion and fear. She didn't know who she was. Her name, her past, her purpose, all of it was a blank slate. She clutched a strange medallion around her neck, the only thing that seemed familiar. Its circular surface glowed faintly, inscribed with intricate symbols she couldn't understand. But holding it gave her a strange sense of comfort, like it was the only piece of her lost identity. The woman staggered through the forest, her bare feet crunching over leaves and twigs. Her head throbbed with flashes of images she couldn't make sense of. Towering buildings made of shimmering crystal, a voice calling her name, and a dark shadow looming over a crowd. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to make it stop. But there was no time to think. She heard them before she saw them. The low hum of engines, followed by the sharp buzz of advanced machinery. Bright searchlights pierced through the forest canopy. Her heart raced. Instinctively, she crouched low, her body moving as if it remembered how to survive even if her mind didn't. Several figures dressed in black futuristic armor entered the forest, moving with precision. Their helmets glowed with red visors, scanning the area. They were looking for something, or someone. One of them raised a small handheld device, which beeped loudly as it pointed toward the woman's direction. She bolted. Branches scraped against her skin as she ran, the medallion bouncing against her chest. Behind her, the armored figures shouted in a language she didn't understand. Blue energy beams shot past her, scorching the trees. One blast hit the ground near her feet, sending her flying forward. Pain shot through her body as she landed hard on her side. She turned, desperate, as one of the figures closed in on her, a weapon aimed directly at her chest. Her heart pounded in her ears. She braced for the end. But then, out of nowhere, a loud, rumbling engine shattered the tension. A rusty pickup truck burst onto the scene, headlights blinding the armored figures. A man leaned out of the driver's seat, his face lit up with both annoyance and determination. "Get in," he shouted. She hesitated for only a second before scrambling to her feet and diving into the truck's open passenger door. The man hit the gas, and the truck roared away, bouncing wildly over the uneven forest floor. The figures shouted and fired after them, but the truck's unpredictable path made it hard to aim. Who are they? And why are they shooting lasers at us? The man yelled over the chaos, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. "I don't know," she shouted back, clutching the door handle as the truck swerved violently. "You don't know? Lady, they don't send stormtroopers after people for nothing." "I said I don't know," she snapped, her voice trembling. "I don't even know who I am." That shut him up. The man glanced at her briefly, his expression softening. His dark hair was messy, his face covered in oil smudges. He didn't look like a hero, more like someone who accidentally stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. "Well, you better figure it out fast," he muttered, swerving the truck to avoid a tree. "Because they're not giving up." As if on cue, the sound of engines roared behind them. The armored figures were chasing them on hovercrafts, their sleek machines cutting through the trees effortlessly. The man let out a frustrated groan. "Great, just great. This is how I die. In the middle of nowhere, saving some space princess." "I'm not a princess," she said automatically, though the words stirred something in her. He snorted. "Sure. And I'm not a mechanic who should have stayed home tonight." The chase intensified. The man yanked the wheel, sending the truck skidding onto a narrow dirt road. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a strange-looking device. It was a mix of wires and glowing components, a makeshift weapon. "Hold this," he said, tossing it to her. "What am I supposed to do with it?" she asked, staring at the device. Pointed at them and pressed the button. "It'll do something. Probably. Probably. No time for questions, princess." The armored figures closed in, their weapons glowing ominously. The woman took a deep breath, gripped the device tightly, and aimed it out the window. As she pressed the button, a bright pulse of energy shot out, hitting one of the hovercrafts. It spiraled out of control, crashing into the trees. She stared at the device in disbelief, her hands trembling. What is this thing?" The man grinned. "Let's just say I have a knack for building stuff. You're welcome." As they sped away, the forest grew darker, and the sounds of pursuit faded. For the first time that night, the woman allowed herself to breathe. She didn't know who she was, but one thing was clear: this wasn't over. And she wasn't safe yet. Secrets revealed. The basement workshop buzzed with life, its walls lined with tools, half-assembled gadgets, and a collection of things that looked either genius or insane. Jack paced back and forth, muttering to himself as sparks flew from the device he was tinkering with on the table. The woman, still nameless, still a mystery, sat quietly in the corner, watching him with a mix of suspicion and exhaustion. Her silver hair shimmered under the dim light, but her eyes stayed fixed on the strange medallion in her hands. She had cleaned the ash and dirt from it, revealing the intricate symbols carved into its surface. Something about it tugged at her mind, like a half-remembered dream just out of reach. Jack finally broke the silence. "Okay, let me get this straight. You have no idea who you are, where you came from, or why those space samurai were chasing you." She nodded. "That's what I said. I remember. Flashes, faces, voices, but nothing makes sense." "Convenient," Jack muttered, tightening the screw on his latest contraption. "And this thing?" He nodded toward the medallion. "You're clutching it like it's your lifeline." "I think it is," she admitted, her voice soft but steady. "It's the only thing that feels familiar, like it's a part of me." Jack rolled his eyes but held out his hand. "Let me see it." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the medallion. But something in Jack's expression, gruff and impatient, but not unkind, made her trust him. Reluctantly, she handed it over. Jack whistled low as he examined the object. "This isn't just jewelry. The material's not Earth-made, for starters. And these markings," he squinted, holding it closer to a glowing lens on his workbench. "They're not decorative. They're a code." "A code." She leaned forward, suddenly alert. Jack smirked. "Yep. Lucky for you, I'm fluent in tinkering with stuff I don't understand." He plugged the medallion into one of his devices, a mess of wires and blinking lights, and flipped a switch. The machine hummed, then projected a faint blue hologram into the air. It was a map, or at least it looked like one, a network of stars and planets connected by glowing lines. But it was incomplete, pieces of it flickering and distorting as if corrupted. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack tapped the edge of the projection. "A star chart, but not one I've ever seen. If I had to guess, it's a route. Maybe a path to wherever you came from." The woman stared at the hologram, her chest tightening. She didn't recognize the map, but looking at it filled her with a strange mix of dread and longing. "Can you fix it?" Jack scratched his head. "Maybe. If I had more time and, I don't know, an alien instruction manual. But here's the thing." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "This isn't just a map. It's a beacon. A beacon. Her eyes widened. You mean it's sending out a signal, Jack finished grimly. Probably to whoever wants you back. And considering they tried to fry us last night, I'm guessing they're not coming to throw a welcome party. The woman's hands flew to her mouth. Turn it off. They'll find us. I'm working on it, Jack snapped, frantically pulling at wires. But it was too late. The machine beeped loudly, and the map blinked out of existence. In its place, a new hologram appeared. A towering figure clad in golden armor, its face obscured by a helmet. The voice that followed was deep and commanding, speaking a language that made the room vibrate. The woman froze. She didn't understand the words, but the voice was familiar. It echoed in her mind, the same voice from her fragmented memories. Jack frowned. What's it saying? I don't know, she stammered, clutching her head, as if trying to force the words into meaning. But then something clicked. The voice shifted, its tone softening, and she understood. It was calling her by name. Amara, she whispered. The name felt strange on her tongue, but it was hers. She was certain of it. My name is Amara. Before Jack could respond, the hologram flickered and disappeared, leaving the room eerily silent. Amara stared at the spot where it had been, her mind reeling. The voice had said more than just her name. It had spoken of a prophecy, of a forgotten heir, of a weapon that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Well, that's just great. You're not just some random alien crash victim. You're royalty. Or a superweapon. Or both. Amara shook her head. I don't want to be any of those things. I just want to understand who I am. Jack sighed. Yeah, well, you better figure it out fast, princess. Because if that signal reached your buddies up there, we're about to have company. And something tells me they're not here to share snacks. As if on cue, a low rumble shook the workshop. Jack ran to the window and cursed under his breath. In the distance, the sky glowed faintly with the telltale light of descending ships. Amara clenched her fists, the medallion now glowing faintly in her palm. I won't run this time, she said, her voice steady. If they're coming for me, I'll face them. Jack turned to her, eyebrows raised. Yeah. And what's the plan? Amara met his gaze, her violet eyes blazing with newfound determination. I don't know yet, but I won't let them take me without a fight. Jack grinned despite himself. All right then. Let's see what you've got, Space Princess. The rumble grew louder, and the battle for answers and survival was just beginning. The Overlord's legacy. The hidden entrance to the ship groaned as it slid open, revealing a sleek interior bathed in faint, pulsating blue light. Amara stepped inside first, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't know how, but this place felt like home. Her fingers traced the smooth alien metal walls, each step drawing her deeper into something she couldn't fully understand yet. Behind her, Jack hesitated, gripping the strange energy rifle he cobbled together back at his workshop. This is insane, he muttered, his voice echoing in the stillness. How is this thing even buried here? Did nobody notice a spaceship in the dirt? Amara didn't respond. Her focus was fixed on the ship's central console, which sat in the middle of the room like a glowing altar. Symbols like the ones on her medallion hovered above it, shifting and spinning in midair. She felt a pull, an instinct, and before she knew it, her hand was resting on the console. The room lit up. The walls flickered with moving images, stars, galaxies, and planets spinning in rapid succession. The console responded to her touch, humming softly as if recognizing her. Jack's mouth fell open as he stumbled backward, his rifle clattering to the floor. What the hell is this? He whispered. I don't know, Amara said, her voice trembling. But it's alive. A calm, melodic voice filled the room, speaking in a language Jack didn't understand. Amara did. The words weren't just sounds. They were memories. The voice felt like someone familiar, someone she had long forgotten. It's a message, she murmured, Her eyes widened as the voice grew clearer. From him. From who? Jack demanded, his voice rising with unease. What's it saying? Amara's gaze locked on the largest projection, a towering figure clad in ornate armor. His face was sharp, regal, his violet eyes the same as hers. He wasn't just speaking, he was looking directly at her, as if he could see her standing there. My father, Amara whispered. The figure spoke with authority, his voice commanding yet filled with urgency. Amara translated aloud for Jack, her words halting as the full weight of the message sank in. If you are seeing this, Amara, it means they found me. I couldn't protect the Empire, but I can still protect you. They will come for you, just as they came for me. You must be ready. Jack's face paled. They? Who's they? Amara continued, her voice trembling. You are my hair, my bloodline. You are the key to everything. The Empire will not survive without you. She paused, her hands shaking. But you must be careful. The weapon. Her voice faltered as the image glitched. The Overlord's face twisted, his words garbled. The calm blue light turned to a warning red, and a low alarm began to sound throughout the ship. Whoa, 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 what's happening? Jack shouted, scrambling to pick up his rifle. The Overlord's final words cut through the noise. Do not let it fall into their hands. You are the only one who can stop them. The fate of our galaxy depends on you. Amara, remember who you are. With that, the projection faded, and the ship's lights dimmed to a faint glow. The silence was deafening. Jack turned to Amara, his expression a mix of disbelief and frustration. So let me get this straight. You're the daughter of some space emperor, and now there's a galaxy-killing weapon in play. This keeps getting better. Amara's legs felt weak. She leaned against the console, the medallion glowing faintly in her palm. I don't want to be any of this, she said softly. I don't want to be an heir, or a key, or anything. I just want to know who I am. Jack sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. Well, guess what? You don't get to choose. And if that weapon is as bad as Daddy Dearest made it sound, we've got bigger problems than your identity crisis. The ship suddenly rumbled, pulling both of them out of their thoughts. The alarm grew louder, and a display on the console flickered to life. A fleet of ships was approaching fast. Alien ships, their sleek designs unlike anything Earth had ever seen. They found us, Amara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack swore under his breath. Of course they have. Because why not? I guess fixing this is our job now. Huh. Amara straightened, her fear giving way to a quiet determination. It's not just my job, it's my responsibility. Jack raised an eyebrow. That's cute. But unless your responsibility comes with a plan, we're toast. Amara stared at the medallion in her hand, her mind racing. Her father's message wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge. The weapon, the Empire, her bloodline. It all pointed to one thing. She wasn't meant to run. She was meant to fight. I have a plan, she said suddenly, turning to Jack. But I need your help. Jack snorted. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's save the galaxy while we're at it. The ship trembled again as the alien fleet grew closer. Amara stepped toward the console, her hand glowing faintly as she touched its surface. The ship roared to life, its engines vibrating beneath them. Hold on, she said, her voice steady for the first time. Jack barely had time to grab onto the nearest railing before the ship launched itself into the sky, leaving the Earth and their old lives behind. The Alliance. The meeting room was nothing like what Amara had expected. It was cold and clinical, with harsh fluorescent lights that cast sharp shadows over the metal walls. The humans seated at the long table eyed her with suspicion, their military uniforms crisp but their expressions tense. She could feel their fear, their mistrust, like a tangible weight in the air. At the head of the table sat General Heiress, a stern, weathered man with graying hair and a permanent scowl etched into his face. He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice a low growl. "You're an alien claiming to be the heir to some galactic empire, and now an entire fleet is coming to Earth because of you." Amara kept her chin high, refusing to let his tone intimidate her. "I didn't ask for this, General," she said calmly. "But it's happening. And if we don't act, your planet won't stand a chance." Jack, standing beside her with his arms crossed, let out a short laugh. "Yeah, because humanity's been doing so great with alien invasions so far." Heiress shot Jack a glare but didn't respond. Instead, he turned his attention back to Amara. "And you're suggesting we trust you? An alien? For all we know, you're leading them right to us." Amara hesitated. She couldn't blame them for doubting her. If the roles were reversed, she wouldn't trust her either. But there was no time for doubts. The fleet was coming, and every second they wasted arguing was a second closer to Earth's destruction. "You don't have to trust me," she said finally, her voice steady. "But you can't ignore what's coming. They won't stop with me. Once they take me, they'll take this planet too. And everything you know, everything you've built, will be gone." The room fell silent. Heiress leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes studying her as if trying to read her mind. Finally, he sighed. "All right," he said grudgingly. "We'll give you a chance, but you'll be under constant surveillance. One wrong move, and you're done." "Understood." Amara nodded. "Understood." The days that followed were a blur of planning and preparation. Amara and Jack were assigned to a small but elite squad, a ragtag group of soldiers, engineers, and scientists who were as skeptical of Amara as the general had been. They called themselves the Vanguard, though Jack had immediately dubbed them Team Suicide Mission. The base was hidden deep underground, its corridors bustling with activity as humans scrambled to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. Amara spent hours poring over holographic displays, sharing everything she knew about the alien fleet's tactics and weaknesses. The medallion around her neck proved to be more than just a key to her past. It contained valuable data about the fleet's structure, giving humanity a fighting chance. But not everyone was on her side. "Why are we listening to her?" one of the soldiers, a burly man named Grant, said during a strategy briefing. "She's the reason they're coming here in the first place. I'm also the reason you might survive." Amara shot back, her patience wearing thin. "I know them. I know how they think, how they fight. Without me, you're blind." "Enough," Heiress barked, silencing the room. He looked at Amara. "You better be right about this. Because if you're not, we're all dead." Amara didn't flinch. "I know what's at stake." It was during one of these tense strategy sessions that Amara felt the first real connection with the Vanguard. Jack, ever the skeptic, had taken it upon himself to lighten the mood whenever the tension threatened to boil over. "So do your people have, like, space pizza?" he asked one evening, leaning back in his chair. "Because if this is my last week alive, I'd really like to try that." Amara couldn't help but smile. "We have something similar, but I doubt you'd like it. It's made from—" "Don't say bugs," Jack interrupted. "Please don't say bugs." "Sea creatures," Amara finished, amused. "They're considered a delicacy." Jack groaned. "Yep, definitely dying hungry." The small moment of levity was enough to break the ice. The other members of the Vanguard began to soften toward her, little by little. Even Grant, though still wary, stopped glaring at her every chance he got. But the peace didn't last. One night, as Amara reviewed the latest scans of the fleet's movements, the alarms blared. Red lights flashed, and a voice echoed through the base. "Intruder alert! Intruder alert!" Amara and Jack exchanged a look before sprinting toward the command center. When they arrived, chaos greeted them. Soldiers barked orders, and screens showed a breach in one of the outer sectors. "What happened?" Amara demanded. Heiress, standing at the center of the chaos, looked grim. "Someone sabotaged our defense systems. We're exposed." Amara's heart sank. "How? Who?" Jack pointed to one of the screens. "Look," he said, his voice tight. The footage showed a figure in a Vanguard uniform sneaking through the corridors, planting a device near the power grid. Amara's blood ran cold. The saboteur wasn't alien. It was one of their own. "Grant," Jack muttered, his tone heavy with disbelief. He was working with them the whole time. Before Amara could respond, another alarm sounded, a high-pitched wail that made the hair on her arms stand up. Heiress slammed his fist on the table. "The fleet is here." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of those words settling over everyone. Then Heiress turned to Amara. "You wanted a chance to prove yourself. This is it. What's the plan?" Amara straightened, her fear replaced by a burning resolve. "We fight," she said, "but we don't just defend Earth. We take the fight to them." Jack grinned, despite the tension. "Now that's what I'm talking about." As the base prepared for battle, Amara's mind raced. The betrayal stung, but she couldn't dwell on it. She had to focus, because this wasn't just a fight for her survival. It was a fight for humanity's future. Betrayal and loss. The cell was cold and silent, save for the faint hum of the alien ship's engines reverberating through its walls. Amara sat on the floor, her back against the unyielding metal. Her wrists were bound with glowing cuffs, pulsing faintly, suppressing the strange energy within her. Her medallion was gone, confiscated by the very people who claimed her as their own. Her captors had been merciless. The betrayal at the human base still echoed in her mind. A human ally turned spy, leading the alien fleet straight to them. The Vanguard had been caught off guard, their defenses crumbled, and Amara had surrendered to save the others. She didn't know if Jack had escaped or if he, too, had been captured. The thought of him fighting alone in the chaos made her chest tighten. The door slid open with a low hiss, and a figure stepped inside. Amara recognized the uniform immediately. Sleek black armor with gold accents, the emblem of the Empire emblazoned on the chest. The figure removed their helmet, revealing a pale, sharp face with calculating green eyes. "Amara," the man said, his voice smooth and venomous. "It's been a long time." Amara's jaw tightened. She knew him. His name surfaced from the fractured memories in her mind. Commander Vorin, the one who had led the coup against her father, the one who had taken everything from her. "I wish I could say it's good to see you," she said, her voice cold. Vorin smiled, a predator's grin, still defiant, even now. "You truly are your father's daughter, but don't mistake stubbornness for strength. You're in no position to fight me." Amara held his gaze, refusing to show fear. "What do you want from me?" Vorin crouched in front of her, his smile fading. "What I've always wanted. Power. Control. The Empire should have been mine long ago. But your father was a fool, clinging to outdated traditions. And now you stand in my way." "You already have the Empire," Amara said. "Why am I still a threat?" Vorin's expression darkened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out her medallion, holding it up for her to see. "This. You're more than just a figurehead, Amara. This medallion isn't just a relic. It's the key to activating the Overlord's weapon." Amara's blood ran cold. The weapon, her father's greatest secret, a device powerful enough to reshape galaxies. She remembered fragments of his warning. "Do not let it fall into their hands." "You'll never make me help you," she said through gritted teeth. Vorin chuckled, standing and pacing the small cell. "I don't need your help, child. The medallion holds your genetic signature. With it, I can activate the weapon myself. But I thought it would be poetic to let you witness the moment I rewrite history, my way." Amara clenched her fists, her mind racing. She couldn't let this happen. But without her medallion, without her powers, she felt powerless. As if reading her thoughts, Vorin leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you know what your father's greatest mistake was? He underestimated me. Don't make the same error." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Enjoy your last moments, Amara. Soon, you'll see the Empire as it was meant to be. under my rule." The door hissed shut, leaving Amara alone with her thoughts. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel the weight of it all. The betrayal, the loss, the overwhelming odds stacked against her. She closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. And then, a faint sound broke through her despair. A tapping noise, barely audible, coming from the vent above her. Her eyes snapped open as a familiar voice whispered, "Amara, it's me." "Jack," she breathed, hope surging through her like a tidal wave. The vent panel shifted, and Jack's face appeared, smudged with dirt but alive. His grin was as cocky as ever. "Miss me, princess." She almost laughed in relief. "How did you?" "Long story," he said, sliding the panel open and dropping into the cell. "Turns out, these guys aren't as good at securing their ship as they think. Now, let's get you out of here." Jack pulled a small device from his pocket and began fiddling with her cuffs. Amara couldn't help but smile. "You shouldn't have come. I'd let you have all the fun." "Not a chance," he said, glancing up at her. "Besides, you think I'd leave you behind. Not my style." The cuffs clicked open, and Amara flexed her hands, feeling the suppressed energy within her stir. Jack handed her a small alien weapon he'd swiped along the way. "I figured you'd want this." "Thanks," she said, gripping it tightly. "What's the plan?" Jack grinned. "The usual. Blow stuff up, cause chaos, and pray we don't die." Amara stood, her determination rekindled. "Let's make it count." As they crept through the ship's corridors, the faint hum of the engines grew louder. Amara knew they didn't have much time. If Vorin activated the weapon, it would be over, not just for her, but for the galaxy. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. And this time, she wasn't alone. Rewriting history. The alien mothership loomed above the desolate battlefield like a predator stalking its prey. Its sheer size blocked out the stars, casting an ominous shadow over the surface below. Amara stood at the edge of the drop bay inside the ship, her hands gripping the railing as the countdown echoed through the cavernous room. This was it, the final push. Behind her, the Vanguard squad prepared for what could very well be their last mission. Jack adjusted his patched-together armor, the faint glow of his energy rifle illuminating the grim determination on his face. "Tell me again how this isn't a terrible idea," he muttered, glancing at Amara. Amara turned to face him, her expression resolute. "Because if we don't do this, Vorin wins. He activates the weapon, and everything we know, everything we are, disappears. We can't let that happen." Jack gave a short, humorless laugh. "Right. Save the galaxy, overthrow an empire, and maybe grab a snack after. No pressure." One of the Vanguard soldiers, a young woman named Kalia, spoke up. "The fleet's already on high alert. There's no way they're not expecting us." "They're expecting an attack," Amara said. "They're not expecting me." The room fell silent as her words sank in. Amara wasn't just any soldier in this fight. She was the Overlord's heir, the only one with the power to stop Vorin's plan. But the weight of that responsibility was crushing. She glanced at the medallion in her hand, now glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy. This medallion was more than a key. It was the heart of the weapon. And it only answered to her. Vorin had underestimated her when he'd taken it, assuming she'd be powerless without it. But she'd stolen it back, and now it was her turn to play offense. Jack stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Are you sure about this, Amara? I mean, really sure? If you activate that weapon, you don't know what it'll do to you." "I don't have a choice," she said softly. "This isn't about me. It's about stopping him." Before Jack could argue, the ship's intercom crackled, and the general's voice came through. "Team Vanguard, this is command. You're cleared for deployment. Good luck." Amara straightened, her violet eyes blazing with determination. "Let's go." The infiltration started smoothly, too smoothly. The Vanguard team moved through the narrow corridors of the mothership with precision, disabling security systems, and avoiding patrols. Amara led the way, her medallion pulsing like a compass, guiding her toward the weapon's core. But the deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to hum with anticipation, the air growing colder with each step. Amara's heart pounded as memories of her father's warnings resurfaced. This weapon will destroy not just worlds, but the very fabric of time itself. Do not let it fall into the wrong hands. They reached the core chamber, a massive room filled with swirling energy. At its center stood the weapon, a towering structure of alien design, glowing with a menacing red light. Vorin was there, standing on a raised platform, his hands outstretched as he worked to activate the weapon. "You're too late," Vorin said without turning around, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The process has already begun." Amara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Not if I stop you." Vorin turned, his sharp features twisted into a smirk. "Amara, I was hoping you'd come. It feels fitting, doesn't it? The Overlord's daughter, here to witness the dawn of a new empire." "This isn't an empire," Amara spat. "It's a graveyard." Vorin laughed, the sound cold and empty, spoken like someone who doesn't understand true power. "But no matter. You'll understand soon enough." He raised his hand, and the room shook as alien guards emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the vanguard team. Jack muttered under his breath, "Well, this just got interesting." Kalia and the other soldiers opened fire, engaging the guards in a chaotic battle. Amara, meanwhile, focused on Vorin. She climbed onto the platform, gripping the medallion tightly. Its energy surged through her, responding to her will. "You can't stop this," Vorin said, his voice filled with cruel confidence. "The weapon is beyond your control." Amara's eyes narrowed. "Watch me." She thrust the medallion into the weapon's core. A blinding light filled the room, and the weapon's energy turned from red to blue, pulsating with raw power. Vorin's smirk faltered as he realized what she was doing. "No," he hissed. "You don't understand. If you overwrite the weapon's programming, it'll rewrite history," Amara finished. "I know." The weapon roared to life, its energy rippling outward in waves. Amara felt its power coursing through her, threatening to tear her apart. Her memories flooded back, her father's voice, her people, her home. She wasn't just fighting for Earth, she was fighting for everyone. "Amara," Jack's voice broke through the chaos. He was fighting his way toward her, but the energy was too strong. "You can't do this alone." "I have to," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "This is what I was meant to do." With one final surge of strength, Amara channeled her will into the weapon. The energy exploded outward, engulfing the room and sending Vorin flying. Amara collapsed to her knees, the medallion glowing faintly in her hand. The weapon's energy subsided, and the room fell silent. The guards lay unconscious, and the vanguard team stood frozen, staring at Amara in awe. Jack reached her first, pulling her into his arms. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with relief. "You actually did it." Amara opened her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. "It's not over yet," she whispered, "but it's a start." As the team regrouped and prepared to leave, Amara looked back at the weapon. It no longer glowed with malice, but with hope. For the first time, she felt like she had truly taken control of her destiny. And she wasn't done rewriting history yet. A new era. The silence after the explosion was deafening. The alien mothership, once the pinnacle of technological dominance, now drifted lifeless above a fractured Earth. Its massive frame cast a shadow over the battlefield below, a grim reminder of the price paid for survival. Amara staggered to her feet, her body trembling from the overwhelming energy she had unleashed. The medallion in her hand was no longer glowing. Its intricate carvings were dull, as if its purpose had finally been fulfilled. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Amara," Jack's voice broke through the haze, and she turned just in time to see him rushing toward her. His face was a mixture of relief and worry, his usual sarcastic grin replaced with raw emotion. He grabbed her by the shoulders, steadying her. "You're alive." "Barely, but alive." "I'd. Did it," she said, her voice barely audible. "The weapon, it's neutralized." Jack glanced at the towering structure behind her, now a cold, inert monolith. The energy that had once pulsed through its core was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. "You didn't just neutralize it," he said, his voice low. "You rewrote the whole damn game." Amara's legs buckled, and Jack caught her before she could fall. He lowered her gently to the ground, his eyes scanning her face. "You're burning out, princess. What did that thing do to you?" "It rewrote everything," she said, her breath hitching. "Not just the weapon. The Empire, the fleets, Voron's control. It's gone." Jack blinked, struggling to process her words. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" Amara closed her eyes, leaning into him as exhaustion threatened to pull her under. "The medallion was tied to me, to my bloodline. When I activated the weapon, I didn't just stop it. I rewired its purpose. It didn't destroy the Empire. It changed it." "Changed it how?" Jack pressed. "Their memories," she whispered. "Their loyalty. Everything they were programmed to be. It's gone. They're no longer soldiers. They're free." Jack stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "You're telling me you just freed an entire empire with your mind?" Amara gave a faint smile. "Not just my mind. My father's legacy. He built this weapon to destroy. But I turned it into something else. Something better." The days that followed were a blur of negotiations, rebuilding, and reflection. The alien fleet, once an unstoppable force, now hovered in orbit, its ships silent and unmanned. Without Voron's command or the Empire's programming, the soldiers had become individuals, their memories wiped of violence and domination. Many of them returned to their homeworlds, confused but relieved to be free. Amara became a symbol of hope, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy. She stood alongside General Heiress as the human and alien forces worked together to dismantle the remnants of the weapon and forge a fragile but hopeful alliance. But not everyone was ready to move on. "This is insane," Jack muttered as he paced in front of Amara's quarters. "You're just going to leave." Amara sat on the edge of her bunk, her expression calm but resolute. "My place isn't here, Jack. Not anymore. The galaxy is changing, and I need to be a part of that, to guide it." Jack stopped, his frustration evident. "You've already done enough. You've saved everyone. Humans, aliens, the whole damn galaxy. Why can't you just stay?" Amara stood, closing the distance between them. "Because this isn't over. The Empire may be free, but it's still fractured. There's a power vacuum, and if someone doesn't step up, it'll fall apart. And that someone has to be you." Jack's voice cracked, betraying the emotions he'd been trying to hide. "Yes," she said softly. "It does." Jack looked away, running a hand through his messy hair. "You know, you're the most infuriating person I've ever met." Amara smiled faintly. "I'll take that as a compliment." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jack sighed, turning back to face her. "You'd better come back," he said, his voice laced with both anger and affection. "Because if you don't, I'm coming after you, and I'm bringing space pizza." Amara laughed, the sound light and genuine despite the weight of their conversation. "Deal." As the alien ship prepared to depart, Amara stood on the platform, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The humans and aliens who had fought beside her gathered below, their faces a mixture of gratitude and sadness. General Heiress gave her a sharp salute, which she returned with a nod. Jack stood apart from the crowd, his hands shoved into his pockets. He didn't wave or call out, but their eyes met, and that was enough. Amara's heart ached, but she knew this was the right path. The ship's engines roared to life, lifting her into the sky. As the earth grew smaller beneath her, Amara felt a sense of both loss and hope. She had left behind more than just a planet. She had left behind a family. But she had gained something greater, a purpose. The galaxy was on the brink of a new era, and she would be there to guide it. Not as a weapon, or a queen, or a savior, but as Amara, the forgotten Heiress who had rewritten history. And this time, she wouldn't do it alone.